I've been noticing in the clips that we've shared, particularly one where it said is tarot magic, that getting more pushback on my social media than on kind of pretty much anything else. So clearly this is a topic that people have questions about and would like to hear me ramble on in professorial mode for some extended period. I went to the library today and I actually checked out a book from the games section, which was in fact a history, or maybe not even history, just a little picture book, but with some history of exactly where that deck that I was showing you last time came from, this Visconti Sforza deck. And I'm looking forward to your questions. I'm looking forward to hearing what, experience you have with, thinking about the possibility of, I don't know, what are we talking about tonight? I'm really actually quite used to having kilts on the other end and helping me through this. So one thing I will say, the tarot is in fact a card game. That's all it was for hundreds and hundreds of years after this particular deck was made. And this is the famous one, the Visconti Sforza one, that the cards are actually in the Morgan Library collection in New York. And if the questions go that way, I can show you that website again, and you can look through the pictures yourself. I shared today, and we'll put in the links, a little video that the Morgan Library has itself on their own website, and they confirm what I was saying in the responses to people's questions. These are playing cards, and there's some interesting backstory about why you can find so many decks of tarot cards now, and they have so many different drawings and pictures, and everyone uses them for divination. The short answer is that's silly. They're playing cards, and I will keep saying it. They are playing cards. They are no more magical than these cards with pictures of, conservative media personalities on them were back in 2016. They are simply differentiated cards, and people like decorating them. They like decorating them in the same way that if you go to, your alumni office. I was digging around in decks of cards that I have down somewhere in our games cabinets, right? And this is a deck that was put out by, well, the place where I work, the University of Chicago, right? And we have some fairly boring pip cards, although they did try to do them with some fancy designs. But these are actually quite nifty. Fancy face cards. I don't know who the artist is on these, but fairly nicely drawn. And the impulse to decorate them is clearly quite strong. Now, we could be asking questions about why people like making hand-sized fancy little ornamental game pieces. And that could be a question that we want to go to. Here's this one I find a little sinister. For some reason, the Queen of Hearts has her mouth covered, and as far as I know, these came out before the masking thing was a thing. So I don't know why she's already veiled. I'm gonna keep looking through these. This one I rather like. A jack is a gargoyle, right? That's one of the gargoyles that we have on campus. Here we are. I think they're taking them from like sculptures and things that are on our buildings. It is perfectly possible to start getting, entranced at the idea that somehow, I don't know, you could predict how well you're going to do on your exam by which card I draw, right? Let's see. Am I going to do well on my live stream tonight based on playing cards? An 8 of clubs. So what would that mean? You could do some numerology off of it and get a little Pythagorean and such, and we could, do some scriptural exegesis. It's a playing card. And, I think the really fascinating question to ask about why the tarot become something that people find, troubling to talk about, scary to talk about, is what it is that's going on when we play with this kind of apparent randomized. I mean, they are randomized. I don't think the thing is cards. Unless you're cheating, right? They are truly random in a way. Maybe dice. I don't know. All of these are games. They're all of them are in a sense something that we can start wanting to make bets on, that we can figure out what they're going to do next. Let's see. Now, I will say, let's see. They're magic if I got the 8 of clubs there, if I can cut this deck and get the same card. It's the 2 of diamonds. I'm not a magician. Right. And, I think it is also interesting that, quote magicians, right, sleight of hand artists, use these objects as something to wow people with, right? That you want to believe that, I'm not controlling whatever it is I'm doing here. Ooh, who was that? A MAGA hat, and I'd have to look at the key to figure out who all of these guys were. I mean, the key is rather interesting. There we have a 2 of justice scales and such. They're appealing, right? And they're appealing because they fit in our hands. They're appealing because we like doing things with our hands. I talked last time about how I can't live stream. I can't do my reading. I seem to be okay in class when I'm talking and such like that, but I usually have a pen in my hand. I have to write stuff down. Somehow our embodiment makes us enjoy playing with things that are hand sized and fit in our hands, and that then clearly feeds in some way into our desire to make it feel like we can, I don't know. I have had friends who do like wonderful like close in card tricks games. Patrick Coffin, who I did a live stream with once, you may remember, does close in card tricks for like table tricks and stuff like that. It's clearly a skill that we delight in, seeing people be able to, misdirect us and catch our eyes going other places. So I think there's an element of desire in the fact of the cards, and the fact of they're pretty pictures, they're things that we can play with. And then we have, in fact, the tarot cards. These cards obviously simply have the pips and the face cards, and when we make these memorabilia of packs, we like putting different images on the face cards, and they make it feel like they belong to us in some way. I'm sure most of you watching have played solitaire, and you can't win at you can't even cheat at solitaire unless you cheat. You can tell from like there's no way you can win cleverly in solitaire. It's utterly a game of handling the cards over and over and over again, right? That there's almost no skill in it involved whatsoever, because like if you move this one or that one, I mean, maybe a few forks in the road in terms of choices that you make, but for the most part, the only thing you're doing when you're playing solitaire is manipulating cards over and over and over again, because it's somehow pleasurable for us to do that. Therefore, one of the things I said in our previous stream is, it seems to me quite strange that these cards are so big, because they're actually, I mean, they're big for my hands. Maybe men find them easier to use, but they're actually fairly big to use as playing cards, and these are made to the size that the cards were originally, right? If you look at that video, I realize I really don't have anybody to talk to. I feel sad. I'll take these out. If you look at the video that the Morgan Library made, you can see the curators holding the cards. They're much fatter pasteboard than these, but they must have been, complicated to hold and such. They are the size of iPhones for a point, though. These are luxury items. The original tarot cards, and I've been reviewing for your all's sake exactly what the history is. These cards are the oldest ones surviving. There's some other ones that we have a sort of a deck or a card or two from various decks, but this Visconti Sforza deck is the oldest near complete example that we have of these cards, which tends to suggest that the game itself develops in the region where these cards were made. And I'll continue to show you my props without knocking over my wine, hopefully. This was the book that I was in the library to get today, and it's this Michael Dummett's account of these Visconti Sforza ones. Like, proving I was in the library. It's got a library call number on it. It's not my own book. And he talks about how this deck was made Um, Most likely around 1450. So think mid 15th century. It's definitely made, because we can tell that from the heraldry on the cards, and the history of the cards, that it was made for the couple, the couple, Francesco Sforza and his wife, um, Bianca Maria Visconti, which is why we call it the Visconti Sforza. And there's another deck that seems to be made with by a similar painter and such, that has been suggested was for their marriage. I tend to conflate that and think this Visconti Sforza deck is known as being part of their marriage. Probably not, but what's interesting about the deck is it's clearly a luxury item. These are beautiful paintings in the style of, you know, the little miniatures that become famous in the later Middle Ages for things like prayer books and illustrated books of other kinds. They're you know, beautifully decorated, beautifully made, incredibly appealing simply as portraits and images. It's a luxury game that is played in the court. It's a game of the nobility. Now, that it's called tarot is one of those linguistic sort of transformations that the original terms, when it is probably known as the game of triumphs. So we know it as the game of triumphs, which is trumps, which is, you know, by way of the magic of telephone and etymological change, it becomes tarot, but it's originally tarocchi. It's triumphes. The fancy cards in this game are the trump cards. So, you know, you see why. Oh, my trump cards fell over. Remember this guy, the trump? They're trump cards with the same sort of playfulness and desire to put, you know, known figures, faces of maybe your relatives. I mean, this is interesting that we have, okay, the Pope, but the Emperor, the region in Italy where these come from had been, you know, contested over by the Holy Roman Emperors throughout the Middle Ages. So it's northern Italy. The emperor is a figure that is known to them as you know, a member of the lordship that they have to contend with. Sforza manages, although a conditorati, I can't say that word, and I'm nervous by myself. I don't like doing this by myself. I realize I've lost all my mojo for simply talking to my camera. That Sforza himself manages to get himself declared duke by way of conquering the neighboring towns of Milan, right? So there's a kind of triumphalism in the series of pictures, in the idea that we're going to, you know, have fancy trump cards in what is in effect simply a game of tricks and suits, right? Just like, okay, here, this is a 10 of cups. You can be deceived by the luxury of the cards into thinking that they are meant to be magical, but they're it's more like, you know, fancy jewelry that you get to have trifles and play with. That doesn't mean they're completely innocent any more than thinking these cards are completely innocent, because of course people, maybe you shouldn't be spending your time playing card games, maybe, or solitaire. Maybe you should be using your prayer book instead of your frivolous worldly secular games. They are vanities in that sense, but they were not intended as magical objects.